Welcome to the Uplifting Endeavor. This video is going to be about the Sacral Chakra. We're going to go over the general senses of common knowledge, and then we're going to go a little bit further into the conceptualization of it being brought into your everyday life, and just other forms of philosophy based on this this energetic center here. Right, so as many as you know, the Sacral Chakra is located about 2 to 3 fingers below your belly button. It's a chakra that is associated with emotions, with creativity, with the water element, with the moon as well. And it has a lot of significance in creation. Not just the creation of, a human life, because it is also very much associated with sex. The chakra itself is also very much based on the idea of creativity in general. So it's one in which is something that generates ideas into practical action on a specific structure made within your conceptual mind, in creating things like businesses, inventions, websites, techniques, art, food, you name it. Anything that's created has actually had a structure created by a specific sort of fuel, and this is one that's actually the yin and yang. In Indian philosophy, the sacral chakra is one in which the masculine and feminine commune and allow for a specific sort of format to be established. If you look at a lot of diagrams of like chakras in general, you may see some that have a sort of intertwining of energy channels. They do crisscross at the sacral chakra and at the third eye. Otherwise, in India's main energetic philosophies, there are 3 channels. So there is a masculine, there's a feminine, and then there's one in the middle. This is a sort of diagram as to how the Kundalini awakens and grows itself upward, but sort of in a whole full circle circumstance. But that's something that we can definitely discuss at a different time when I have people asking about it. But as of right now, all you need to know is that these aspects of masculine and feminine energy channels, crisscross here at the sacral chakra, and in doing so, establish this sort of requirement of balance within the next step of your spiritual journey. If you are looking to activate those chakras and looking to just understand the self. In that Indian philosophy, it is something that has been talked to very thoroughly about the sexuality of this chakra and the sort of understandings you can gain about your energy and what can be done in exchange with another person's energies. And these sorts of experiences are ones done through tantra and specific sorts of yoga. This experience is one that many gurus have talked about, many yogis have talked about, and is one that I'm sure if you'd like to get to satiate your curiosity about, you can read about. Because the specific aspects of the sacral chakra that I have meditated on and explored within myself and just understood through philosophies is one where it is a self-defining sort of chakra. It's also something that's talked about within Hindu philosophy, but that is also more associated with deity in mind. Through their philosophies, can attain a sense of sensational enlightenment, one in which the body feels an extreme high, and it's one that can through the right kind of practices and the right kind of focuses and the right kind of teaching and teachers, can be used to awaken the Kundalini, can be used to bring about senses of energetic enlightenment. I am not one of those people. So this one is, like I said, more about that self-defining feature of the chakra. In Chinese philosophy, there is this sort of principle in which you commune with the earth, which is the strengthening and the structuring of your root chakra. This is done through qigong, tai chi, meditation, and yoga. This aspect of the root chakra, like I've talked about beforehand, is based on a few specific principles that allow you to become the parent that your inner child needed when you were younger, to be compassionate, to be self-aware, and be self-accepting. These formats and frames in which you can establish and allow a sort of communion with the earth itself allows for a profound connection to yin energy, which is a great feminine energy. When you've cultivated that energy enough and then look to ascribe to a deeper self-understanding, the next step is that sacral chakra, which is a sense of that balance between the yin and the yang, the divine masculine and the divine feminine. The yin being feminine, yang being masculine. The aspect in which they complement each other and commune is one where the masculine itself within you, within everybody, and when established, is one where you define your boundaries in life, what it is you're willing to accept, what it is you're not, and what it is you're willing to compromise when the time comes. These sorts of understandings are frames of reference to the self that you have at a point when you're, trying to understand yourself through that lens of that the divine feminine, which is that self-compassion, self-accepting, self-understanding, and that parenting. The sacral chakra is when you begin to grow that inner child into the adult that you needed when you were young. The masculine itself is defined by fine lines. It is the boundary maker of your life. And it is what takes hits when you compromise on your inner self and you compromise on your true values, on your heart's desires, on your life purpose. The divine masculine in a lot of people's lives is one that is protective, that is aware, and that is a lifeguard. It becomes this wise version of yourself, one that understands when to apply pressure to things, when to be patient and passive and watchful, when it is important to be forceful, when it is important to be aggressive if necessary. The divine masculine is the measurement of these scales of you. The expression of it is that divine feminine. It is the energy being used to fulfill this frame, to fuel it. The divine feminine nourishes it. That sense of importance, that sense of value, and allows you to realize the things you need to do in order to reinforce this wiser, more aware, self-defining frame. These aspects in your life in which who you allow within your friend group, what it is you are willing to accept from your family, what kind of attitude you have with yourself when you mess up, when you're in success, what kind of person you really are. And in that aspect of that sort of self-compassion, acceptance, and awareness, you no longer depend on others to define that for you. You no longer allow yourself to live by somebody else's standards. That's communion of the divine masculine and feminine is one in which you create the substance. Since you have that understanding, since you have that self-compassion, since you have that acceptance, you are now certain in what it is that you need. And in striving for those needs and then establishing for a foundation for wants, you create a certain sort of value system. And this value system, established by the divine masculine, understanding what's your worth and realizing that you will not settle for less than for your own benefit. And when fueled by the divine feminine, because it's already funneled through that lens, like I said, it becomes something that in itself is of substance, in which you won't have any sorts of delusions, limitations, or blocks about. It'll just be something that you know you deserve, and there's nothing that's going to tell you otherwise. If you've ever tried to start something new, if you've ever had if you've ever tried to do a new sport, start a new hobby, something, anything, it was just a little too challenging sometimes, and you had that sort of self-doubt, you've had that sort of limiting mindset, this is not a problem of the divine masculine. It is actually a problem of the divine feminine. In those times, when you have those doubts, many people will go about destroying themselves. Like, oh, I'm not good enough. It wasn't worth it. It was too difficult. I just wasn't enough. When you have those moments of doubt and you get that flooding of just negative self-talk, that is ignorance upon your own substance. Because the decision to do that difficult thing was the masculine. The force and the consistency in which you apply that frame, apply that goal-oriented mentality and that problem-solving skill set of yours, you are actualizing the divine masculine. But if you don't have enough of that divine feminine cultivated, if you don't have enough of that self-understanding, that self-acceptance, and that awareness of the self, you will not get far in your goal. Because the world and your mind will come up with billions of reasons why you can't or shouldn't do something. The reality is in what you are accepting. The divine masculine there is the thing that defends your goal and striving for something that you really want. The compassionate self-motivation and that compassionate discipline. Like David Goggins is a guy that has an immense divine masculine, but his masculine has a overshadowing aspect of his divine feminine. So in those, make it or break it moments, and you just need to fucking toughen up, you just need to just hold out for just a little bit longer while you just struggle to get to that fucking finish line, that is a mentality that is golden, and it is a survival tactic. When you're just striving for something, a life goal, when you're striving for something important to yourself, but it's not life or death. It can be, it could be a metaphorical life or death situation in which, your greatest dreams can just shatter around you, and, you end up feeling like a broken person. That could definitely be a circumstance. But in the beginnings of these goals, the beginnings of your trials and tribulations in life, that divine feminine is what allows you to smooth over those doubts, smooth out and fill that empty space, that uncertainty, that ignorance, that fear, that doubt, because this may be something new to you and you don't know if it's going to happen. You don't know if it's going to work. But when you fill in that empty space with a compassionate, accepting, and aware mindset, aware orientation to the self, like I said, established in that root chakra to begin with, it is something that just ends up in streamlined. You, at that point, when you really get good at cultivating that divine feminine, will no longer have room for those doubts, for those insecurities, for those uncertainties and negative self-talk. You won't beat yourself up when you fail, because you'll have understood that not everyone gets things done. You know what? you'll realize something deeper than nobody gets it on the first try. You'll realize that the goal that you're striving for is worth the failure, and it's okay if you fail. That's the biggest divine feminine message. It's one of the biggest messages. Even if you fail, it's okay. Even if you do try your hardest, and even if you do just make it almost to the top and still fall with a snowball effect all the way down to the bottom of that mountain, it's still okay. You're still who you were, at least at the beginning, striving for something. The divine feminine and the divine masculine are aspects in which proper action take place within that balance, within that understanding, and within that stubbornness. It's a requirement in moving forward in the in spiritual journeys. Many people say that it's important to be that broken branch in the river, allowing it to take you on the current. It's also wildly important to realize you are more than just that branch. You are that river. You are the current. You are the path in which you make your life. And it doesn't have to be one you take passively. The point of the divine masculine feminine is to understand when it's wise to do so, when it's wise not to. The reality is that the divine masculine and divine feminine are these frames of mind fueled by that compassion, acceptance, and understanding. It is the ones in which can sprout from a healthy soil because you've already harnessed and cultivated that yin energy. So the sacral chakra is one in which you apply the rules to your inner child. The divine masculine sets the standards of expectations and the goals desired for the inner self. It's also the thing that safe gates that inner child. It is the thing that protects that inner child from the hardships of the world. The divine yin has an ability to protect you from the inner kind of harshness that you've experienced from the outside world, but that is done so through a more healing process. So you no longer have those doubts, you no longer have those insecurities, you no longer have those fears, because you've already taken the point into understanding yourself and accepting your shortcomings and being compassionate about that instead of beating yourself up. When you've done that work, and it's not easy, but when you've done that work, you set the ground to create that life that you decide that you want to live. It is no longer, like I said, defined by the outside parameters of the world. You are now self-defining. That is the biggest purpose that I found for the sacral chakra within my meditations. It's just to realize that you are now a self-defining creature. You are no longer one that allows the dogmas, mentalities, the status quos of society or the world around you to define you, to limit you. What I've found is when you're striving for something to be successful in, the loser between you and the world is the one that flinches first. So the moment that you abandon your divine masculine, the standards of life you've decided to live, that's the standards that you in that moment, in those moments where you were alone with yourself and looking through that compassionate lens, establish this is what I'm going to be living for, this is what I'm going to be striving for, this is what I deserve. The moment that you have a doubt about it and flinch, you can have doubts. The divine yin, the divine feminine will heal those doubts, will allow you to accept those doubts and still move forward anyways. The moment that you relinquish that divine masculine and those standards of life that you're living is the moment that you lose in your desire to achieve your own greatness, your own desires, your own life purpose. So the standards in which you live your life are the masculine. The force in which you compel that masculine to exist and to manifest is through the feminine. The ability to handle the failure that is on everyone's path on their way to success is something that is handled by the divine feminine through that compassion, and it is avoided or it is outsmarted by the divine masculine. So you eventually develop yourself into that wise person, striving for the same goal you did when you were younger. And in that aspect of that lack of flinch is one that allows you to manifest your life the way you want it, despite the outside circumstances. So, in understanding the self-defining feature of the sacral chakra, established by the divine masculine and fueled by the divine feminine, you now become this wiser, self-created being, no longer dependent on the circumstances in which you were raised, no longer limited by the trauma that you had to live through, no longer held down by outside dogmas and societal standards and status quos. You are now this self-sufficient being who allows itself to grow from its natural coexistence with the world, energetically speaking. It is one in which you've allowed that great mother to hold you, and then allowed your understanding, your compassion, right, healing and awareness to create that fertile soil to start establishing those foundations, those standards of life. And in doing so, you no longer become a victim of life. Eckhart Tolle speaks about the emotion body, and he talks about it as the pain body. In your development of the yin and yang within yourself, it is something that I have found to be transformational. It is something that I have found to be healing, and in the way that it does so is transmutation. When you focus on that sacral chakra, it's one that, at least in my experiences, that I've been able to turn into a sensory perception chakra instead of an emotion chakra or a pain body. The pain body that Eckhart Tolle is one that holds on to all of your psychological damage, all of your emotional trauma. The thing is about these sorts of traumas and pains is that your brain can perceive them as pains of the physical body and will perceive it as painful as physical damage. If you ever read the book The Body Keeps a Score, Dr. Van der Kolk talks about how the body itself will literally have just tons and tons of physical sorts of reciprocated trauma equal to the damage someone has received on the emotional level, on the psychological level. He found that the cerebral cortex and the emotional part of it is the most closely intertwined with your subconscious. So your emotions have a deep-seated connection to your unconscious, to your subconscious. And it is one in which you can use to interpret the subconscious. You can interpret the pain. You can look back on things and still feel them. If you've ever had a traumatic experience and then you happen to have PTSD and you have a flashback, these parts of the brain, this sort of interconnectedness is one of the reasons why. It's because the pain body or the emotion body is still experiencing that trauma, that pain, that terrible and unfortunate circumstance that you found yourself in at whatever time of your life. And the physical one still reciprocates that experience because, like I said, your brain will not know the difference between emotional pain and a physical one. It is interpreted on the same pain scale. So, Eckhart Tolle had mentioned that he had found a sort of enlightenment in the most tragic pain of his whole life. This pain had shattered his emotion body and pain body and allowed him to shed a sort of weight to his life and allowed him to perceive it through a specific sort of lens. Now, it isn't the same lens that I've realized through that sort of compassion and awareness and acceptance. It was a perception that was trying to get him to understand something. It was probably, in my understanding of the greater scheme of things, and all the clients that I've worked with in my business, and all those that I've worked with in the mental health field in general, the universe has a way of trying to tell you something, and this something will just continually repeat itself, and it will eventually break you if you just do not listen. The way in which your sacral chakra plays a part in this is that emotion body. Your emotion body will continually just try to stick that pain deep within your unconscious so you don't have to deal with it again. But the continual reciprocation, like I told you, that the body experiences because of it, it's still there. It's still there, but it's just not consciously accepted. So the emotion body shoves it deep down inside. And if you ever understood that the things that you don't face are the things you constantly have to deal with for the rest of your life, is very real because of this. So like I said, the lesson in which that you think the universe is trying to tell you, it is just the one that your subconscious is trying to tell you. It is one where you have continually gone out with the wrong person all your life. You've continually chosen the wrong decisions, made lefts instead of rights, rights instead of lefts, when you knew that you should have, when you knew because of hindsight, because you've gone across that bend before, that they should have made a different decision, but didn't anyways. In all the circumstances in which you find yourself in and feel trapped, it is always and has always been because of this mechanism. It's not one that's conscious. Like I said, it's very much intertwined with the emotions, and that's very much intertwined with the subconscious and unconscious. And it is a defense mechanism. It is one that people that go through hardships in life have. It's one that is developed because of the necessity for survival. When you've buried enough things within your subconscious, it becomes a poisoned soil. And the only things that you can grow in your metaphorical garden are these tainted fruit. There's a reason why people will strive for goals, and all of a sudden, once they start making those goals, break out of their comfort zones, that all the world around them just decides to kind of just crash, and then all of a sudden they find themselves on fire. Like, oh my God, why am I burning? And you don't understand. No one does, because no one's delved into that subconscious. No one's delved into the emotional pain body. And when you've gone through enough trauma, that pain body develops. Eckhart Tolle went through a process of death and rebirth when he had finally reached that unavoidable experience, that absolute terrible, tragic pain, because it was right in front of his face. He couldn't avoid it. When the world gives you a terrible experience, horrible experience, traumatic, and you refuse to learn from it. Not to say that you were unfortunately raped, and so you'll never trust a man again. That's not learning from it. That is a trauma response to a trauma. That is a reaction. Learning from it is understanding yourself in the circumstance, understanding the world around you, understanding the individual that did that horrible thing to you, having compassion for yourself first and most of all. Having the understanding of somebody else and yourself in that circumstance, and accepting the reality in which you just don't have all the answers. The reality in which you can do all the right things and still end up with the worst results. The acceptance of this within yourself and about the world is something that many, many, many people need to learn. And that develops a sense of detachment. This detachment is the lesson of the pain body. That is the whole reason why you have a pain body, is to realize detachment. It's because you will experience these many, 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 many subconscious deaths through the trauma, through the overwhelming pain that you just can't necessarily scratch the surface of, because it's just that painful. It's through those constant small deaths that you can establish a real sense and a real lesson learned from that experience, when it's done so subconsciously and then comfortably brought into the conscious. That's what they call shedding in a spiritual sense. When you've entirely ignored that whole part of yourself, and you've ignored that incredibly major part of yourself, because there is a lot more of you that's unconscious than there is that is conscious. When you ignore it, the subconscious will pull in all of the things that will get you to eventually focus on that pain. It's not within your control. This is the most interesting part of living this life, is that you are not in control of yourself 100%. Dr. Peterson talks about this. There's no decision in your life in which you are aware of yourself within it at 100%. Not ever. And so, or at least not always, almost never. In my experience, almost never. You'll have some incredibly powerful gurus. You have some incredibly aware people that can understand themselves in the decision that they're making, but that's usually only done through incredible senses of self-analyzation and a repetition of specific decisions, and that repetition being devoted to like this grander purpose, or this more fulfilling and fulfilled sense of the self. It's difficult to get into that now, but as it is right now, when you ignore all that, your subconscious, the part of you that you cannot control, will bring that world in upon you. I'm not ready to move on to the next level. I'm not ready for that success. I am still in an incredible amount of pain. How can I accept success? How can I go and strive for things that are better when I'm still writhing in horrible agony within myself, and I can't even get myself to listen? That is your subconscious. That is the reason why when you strive for success, when you strive for bigger things and better things, and try to be healthy and try to make a difference in your own life, and yet still find yourself in the same hole, or dealing with the same problems, or just having an entire, just unexpected, cataclysmic, and apocalyptic experiences in your life, just trying to do better. It's because your subconscious is in control. It's because your subconscious has yet to find you. You have yet to find it. You have yet to communicate and establish what it is you've been dealing with all of your life. And so you will continually do this cycle. You'll continue following through on your journey to something better, and then falling short of it. You will continually be just out of reach from your life's goal. And it's because you couldn't listen to yourself. You didn't know how. You weren't taught. No one is. And in those circumstances, like I said, the world will bring you to that Eckhart Tolle moment where you have no choice. You have no escape. This extreme agony that your subconscious is feeling has now brought you and manifested you into it within the waking world. To say, I need this healed. And then that paradigm shift will happen. You will heal the circumstance and detach from it. And in detaching from it, on that process of healing, you will get to actually, this is a neurological process as well. It's one in which, it's a rapid eye movement therapy in which you are exposed. This is an example of it. It's when you're exposed to the trauma you're going through, but you're moving your eyes left and right rapidly. It happens for an hour. The therapist will go through this whole experiences of your life with you, and will have you go through this exercise looking left and right. The process is one in which you are now actualizing a neurological network. You are now activating it over and over and over again, and refusing to allow your brain to shut down, which is what happens in trauma. Your brain, parts of your brain literally shut down. Neurological processes just diminish to survival, which is what you experience. You experience the need for survival because you were in a life or death situation. And in those circumstances, you are, at least in that therapy, that example therapy, you are now detaching and becoming more aware of the grander scheme of things. You are no longer being anchored down and shrunken to fit that box that kept you safe, but also kept you in pain all of your life. That experience is one that I've had through my sacral chakra, is one that I've realized. The world isn't against you. You just don't think you're ready for it yet. And so this is the understanding and actualization of the sacral chakra that I've been able to get to. It's that transmutation, like I said. When you ignore the emotion and pain body, this is what happens. When you accept yourself, accept your shortcomings, your doubts, your insecurities, and you become compassionate to yourself anyways. And then through that, you are now more aware of yourself, more aware of that small version of yourself, looking at that bigger version of yourself, looking up at that even bigger version of yourself. Through compassion, acceptance, and then understanding. After you've established that, like I said, only the root chakra, the first chakra, the sacral chakra, allows you to transmute that pain body, that emotion body, into a sensory perception body. The point of the sensory perception body is something that is actually very attuned to Buddha's enlightenment. When you read about him, the expression of his chakra, there's a reason why this chakra is the Buddha mudra, but it's also the one that allows you to establish a deeper connection to the sacral chakra. It's because that was his enlightenment. That's what he was able to do. He was able to establish his sensory perception over the emotion and pain body. He was able to understand, because, like I said, the emotion, the actual emotional parts of your brain, the most basic and primal parts of it, are so intertwined with your physical body that when you feel the emotional pain, you get physical stresses. You get muscle tensions in places you just shouldn't. You know? Like you work out all the time, you stretch, but you still have this aching and agonizing neck pain, this shoulder pain, this lower back pain, hip pain. And it's because your emotion body is still going through the pain. Even if you taught the body that certain pain is good for you. There are just some things you just can't get around. So, in transmuting that emotion body, that pain body into a sensory perception, you are not ignoring your emotions anymore. You are now confronting each emotion as it presents itself through that sensory perception. It's like, why am I hunched over? So in my practice, I've been able to understand like my alignment with my own actual ability to stand up straight and sit up straight. Like if I'm in the right posture, I'm feeling more in tune with myself, more confident in myself. When I'm slouching, or if I'm feeling tired, or if I'm feeling groggy, that's when I feel I'm out of tune. And I have that body posture to fit that frame, because that's what you're doing. You're now transmuting that emotion body into a perception body. So you're transmuting that emotion body and those emotions into a perception. I feel tired. I feel overwhelmed. I feel confident. I feel empowered. I feel aware of myself. I feel centered. The ways in which you can perceive emotions can be done so on the artificial level, even, so that your sympathy becomes empathic, so that you can actually analyze somebody else's emotions and still not be consumed by them. This is a key feature when if you ever find yourself being empathic or very, very sensitive to other people. It's because you're still so locked and imprisoned by your own emotion body, by your own pain body, that you don't know how to detach. You don't know how to identify. You don't know how to perceive, because it's all so close to your face and just so overwhelming that you just don't think you can. You just get overwhelmed. You don't know how, actually. That's the difficult part, is that many people don't know how. So, in that transformation, in that sense of enlightenment, in that detachment from your emotions, you do not ignore them. Buddha's greatest enlightenment was realizing pain isn't the answer. Is realizing sacrifice and suffering isn't the answer to enlightenment. And the reason why the world goes through the suffering is self-imposed. Like I said, it is done by the things and parts of you that you do not have control over, or at least that you have yet to establish a relationship with, because you don't have control over all of yourself. You will have a relationship with it. When you have that sensory perception, you'll be able to understand, like, maybe if you had like an addiction, a drinking problem, and you all of a sudden have just had the worst day, and you just have all these emotions, all these just like this wretched shit just in your gut, being like just sloshing around because you're just having the worst fucking day, and you just look at a bar. See, if you used to be an alcoholic, you just look at it. The parts of your subconscious are that pain. It's that sloshing and ugly feeling you have inside you, and there's another part of your subconscious. It's like, I don't want to deal with that yet. And that's a part of your subconscious that's more in line and more connected to your conscious, because it's the part of you that's trying to keep you safe. It's trying to keep you away from that devastating and deadly, psychologically and emotionally deadly experience. So you will listen to that thought that tells you, I want to avoid my emotions of this wretched day and maybe just take one beer, just drink one beer. And then it snowballs. And then you're out of control. Now you're entirely unconscious. Slave to the whims of an inner child that's never been listened to, the lifeguard that never understood its own responsibility, and the inner monster, which is the amalgamation of that rage, of that depression, of that self-doubt, which creates moments in life where you lash out. These are parts of you. Many people, I'm not saying you specifically, but many people. It was a part of me, for sure. And in that experience of realizing these parts of me, understanding what parts were lashing out, understanding what parts were just not being heard, and understanding what parts were just trying to do their best to keep me alive within my own life. They were the parts that I had to accept, that had to have compassion for, because they deserved compassion. I can tell you, everyone and everyone deserves compassion from themselves within their own life. I wouldn't say they always need forgiveness. I wouldn't say that they always deserve a better life. I just say that every person deserves self-compassion. That is the only way that I found to grow wholesomely in self-healing. So, this is a process in which that takes place by your establishing that first chakra, like I said before, and then creating the guidelines in which your life will be lived through, and using that divine feminine, that fertile soil you've established for yourself, to reinforce and grow and strengthen that frame of life, that frame of reference that you will now have an ability to control, that frame of reference in life that you will now have an ability to have agency, have awareness, have what it is that you really want in life. And it's because you did the work to understand what you needed. And in doing so, you figured out what you truly deserved. And afterwards, you create the life that's worth all of the pain that you've been through all of your life. So, I hope this video on the Sacral Chakra helps. I hope that you guys found something beneficial from it. I hope you guys found something that helps you make that positive difference in your life. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Deuces.